30th marks the midpoint of the current fiscal year. The report before you summarizes all village funds, although the emphasis both within the report and within my presentation will be on the corporate fund, the water fund, and the two golf courses. Within the water fund, our total revenue expected to be earned by the water fund is about $9.9 million. This is predominantly water or revenue generated from the sales of water, with also some collections for Lake County sanitary sewer, development fees, and again, a small amount of interest income. Collections right now at June 30th equal about $3.2 million, which is about 32% of the revenue budget. Again, that's to be expected. The way we bill on the residential side is a 2-month billing. So what you're seeing at June 30th really only represents about 35% of our billing. So we're running about where we would expect. There are some issues going forward as far as consumption patterns. We develop our rate based on an estimated amount of water expected to be used. We're running below that right now. I think that's driven primarily by weather conditions. We had a very mild, cool, wet spring and into summer. That drives some of it economic decisions as to whether to use water for irrigation or any type of landscape use. And also consumption or conservation efforts by our residents to really watch how they utilize water, and some of the installation of energy efficient appliances has worked into that number as well. On the expense side, again, the department's done a good job to match expenditures with revenues, really watching what they're spending it on and really being cautious about any significant expenditures. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the funds.
Any questions? Trustee Stone.
Yes, I do have a question. Regarding consumption that you hit on, and we talked a little bit about it downstairs, and our public utility director, Greg Boyson, is here, so perhaps he has some answers as well. But you mentioned that our consumption has gone down.
That's right.
And our water is, it's a business for us. It looks like almost $10 million or so?
That's about right.
About $10 million annually. My question to you that I'm hoping that we can have some answers to better understand this is that we created the Northwest Water Commission in the early 1980s, correct, with Buffalo Grove, Arlington Heights, Wheeling, and Palatine. So the 4 communities make up the Northwest Water Commission, and that's in Des Plaines, and we purchase our water from Evanston. Evanston also sells water to Skokie. What I found out, and what I'm concerned, and I shouldn't say concerned, but I'm curious, and I'm hoping either you or Greg Boyson can speak to this, is that our consumption isn't just down this year. Our consumption is down consistently since the 80s. When you compare Northwest Water Commission, made up of the 4 suburbs that I just mentioned, compared to Skokie and Evanston water consumption, per capita, we're using, I don't know the exact figure, but I want to say somewhere near 20% less water annually every year since we began. Given that we're the same culture, and we probably all bathe similarly to people in Skokie and Evanston and drink similar amounts of water, my question is, and I spoke to the people in Evanston, I went right to the source and I said, am I just seeing these numbers? Is it an anomaly, or is it consistent that we use the Northwest Water Commission, these 4 suburbs, do we use less water than Skokie and Evanston per capita? And he said, yes. I said, have you noticed it? He said, yes. I said, what kinds of factors would factor in? And I said, what have you accounted for? He said, we presume perhaps industrial use. So what I want to ask, Scott, both you and Greg Boyson, Greg especially because you're the head of water, you're a public utility, is that can you explain to me that if we're using that different, the disparity in water in a culture and society very similar to these areas, what is the consistent less consumption since it began? If you can explain that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know exactly the figures you're looking at, but certainly traditionally we have consistently used less water per capita, largely attributed to the village's water conservation efforts. Much of the village has been developed in more recent years relative to, say, Evanston or Skokie, and we've had, predating the development occurrence of the majority of the village, many water conservation regulations that keyed into the Lake Michigan water allocation recommendations at the time. So when we first got our allocation, we were running about 80 gallons per capita citywide for residential consumption, and the average nationally is more like 100. So I think our water conservation efforts, really right from the start, were always very good. Possibly what you're seeing is a reduction annually, and I do believe that the amount of rain that falls during the otherwise watering season can have an effect year to year, and this year, of course, we've had a lot of rain and things like that. So certainly the amount of rain that falls during the grass watering season can attenuate our peak demands, and people do, I believe, make economic decisions about lawn watering and exactly how green they want the lawn to be given all the other considerations of the family budget. So I believe those would be the primary reasons.
Okay, so if I can just follow up with that question, the way that it works out, a man that runs the Northwest Water Commission, Mr. DeRocher, and perhaps he can opine on this and give us his information. He answers to the 4 village managers from each of the suburbs, ours, Palatine, Wheeling, and Arlington Heights. And so that's how the business is set up. So what I'd like to understand is not just this year that our consumption is down. I would like a better handle on, since we started bringing Lake Michigan water to the Northwest Water Commission via Des Plaines, that being the headquarters, I would like to understand the disparity in usage. And I understand that we're conserving, and obviously the 4 suburbs that we're part of, we're very good at conserving. But I would, if we can, I'd like to find out more specifically over the years that type of information, if we can. I just want to understand it better just from a perspective of just understanding.
Thank you, Trustee Stone. That issue was one we obviously fully discussed during finance, and I think you've raised some of those same questions in finance, and we will have staff get back to us. Obviously, I think we can be very, very proud that we have these conservation efforts in Buffalo Grove.